Sid Whittle. If a public learns of the confidential info found in OT3 and higher, how does the church handle that? It must come out in auditing somehow. Is it reported to ethics? And if so, what does that mean for the individual? What if someone learns the secrets before they're ready, quote unquote, and then they get to OT3 and realize that what they heard was actually true? What would the reaction be? Do you have any firsthand knowledge on that happening to someone? Okay, so finding out about OT3 or confidential Scientology information before you get to it. Here is what I can tell you from my own firsthand experience on this. I worked at the Advanced Organization of Los Angeles, and I worked on the line where people who were at the level of clear were coming along and doing the steps necessary to get onto the OT levels. So I was right at the entrance gate of people going on to those levels, and we had to do what's called a security check to ask them a whole bunch of standardized questions on the e-meter and make sure that one of the things they had not done was look into or find out about the confidential information online or through any other means, like through books or anything like that. And they are very thorough about this. They really want to make sure. There are a couple reasons for that. The stated reason within the world of Scientology that you have to get sec-checked on that and that they rake you over the coals about it is because you're expected in going on to the OT levels to be entrusted with what Scientologists consider to be the literal secrets of the universe and life itself. This is supposed to be the big, top, high quality, unbelievable information that man has been striving for from day one of man being man, right? Of human beings even existing in the world. Why are we here? What is it all about? What is going on in the big wide universe? Who are we really? Why do we act the way we do? Like all of these and many, many more questions, including the nature of spirituality and God, all of this stuff is supposed to be answered on these OT levels. Hubbard calls them the living lightning, the stuff that makes up life itself, and blah, 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 all this marketing and promotional stuff about these OT levels. But he really, truly did seem to believe that he hit on something very, very important with all of this. And it wasn't just about the space aliens and Xenu. It was about rehabilitating people spiritually and giving them power. In Scientology, again, the view is that as an operating Thetan, you are going to have powers and abilities far beyond the normal ken of men, right? And women, or, human beings, right? You're going to be rehabilitating your spiritual powers and abilities, and you're going to have responsibilities connected with that. And they're not willing to just give that information to anybody. They want people who are going to keep the information secure. So if you're the kind of person who's looking for a shortcut or a roundabout or has been exposed to this information because you purposefully went and looked for it, then you are somebody who cannot be trusted with these secrets because you couldn't wait your turn, you couldn't wait to be ready, and you are just trying to get something for nothing, right? That's that exchange factor in Scientology. Hubbard was always so adamant about. So that's the idea as to why there's all this security surrounding this information. Now, obviously, from an outsider perspective, and I now know as a person who used to be and no longer is in Scientology, that all of this is nonsense and that these answers, supposedly quote-unquote answers that they're giving you are just more hogwash and nonsense. They don't answer any of the questions that we would like answered, and they don't help a person resolve their life difficulties or problems. OTs go bankrupt just as much, if not more, than regular Scientologists and people at large. They develop cancer and leukemia and bad eyesight and all the host of problems that any people who get old and live life here on this earth as a human being, all those same problems OTs experience at the same rate and at the same intensity as any other human being, or WOG, as they like to call them in Scientology, a very derogatory term. So there isn't anything special about this knowledge or information, but Scientologists have really built this up, man. I mean, they really think this is the This is what's going to handle everything and all the sacrifices and all the work that they do is just to get this OT information. So having worked at the Advanced Org in Los Angeles, right on this line, what I saw myself is that there was a guy who came along who had been studying the OT materials online. This was 2003, 4, around that time period. And the case supervisor who oversees, these security checks and granting somebody the approval, she was literally the one who had the approval stamp. Then it had to go to RTC, who gave final approval on every single person who went on to the OT levels. She was like, yeah, no, he's never going to get on the OT levels. And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So he's seen this stuff online, and maybe it's screwy, maybe it's not. We didn't really get into that too much. I didn't ask her about it. But I have been told by other Scientologists that they truly believe that the information online is not true, is what they call squirrel OT levels. It's not the real L. Ron Hubbard written and approved OT levels. And of course, at this point, for all you and I know, it might not be anymore, because they could change that OT data, in fairly significant ways, and make it so that the stuff that's online now isn't what people get. I mean, they could always do that. Nobody would really know or even care that much. They would put it out. I mean, Miscavige could do anything and get away with it, like certain other individuals, right? Cult leaders who can say or do anything, and the cult followers will simply take it in stride, come up with some rationalization for why that has to be that way, and carry on as though it's no big deal, even if it's the most hypocritical, outrageous, nonsensical thing you could imagine. So anyway, but as far as people get on these levels, they will not be allowed on the levels if they have proven that they cannot be secure. And exposing yourself purposefully to those materials will definitely tell the church that you are not somebody who can be trusted with that information. Now, as far as somebody getting onto it and then seeing it and going, well, this is what I read, well, that's the exact thing they're trying to prevent, right? So if somebody were to successfully withhold that they had looked at that information online, or if they accidentally had seen some part of it, that person might get onto the OT levels, right? Because the church wouldn't know. Or they would know that this person might have heard the word Xenu somehow, because it's pretty common. It's kind of hard not to hear it in relation to Scientology. Or they might have heard some other bit or piece of something. In that case, they might look at the OT materials and go, oh, well, Xenu is real, so that was right. But they're not going to necessarily think that what they read online is going to be Hubbard's given word, because what they're reading, well, all the things they had to work for and invest in and all of that are going to convince them that this is the real deal, and whatever they saw or heard about isn't, and is just, like I said, squirrel. That's a big deal. They have to invalidate the stuff that's online. They have to invalidate us as critics, anybody who's critical of Scientology, etc. So also the other thing, though, let's say that you had somebody who saw South Park, somebody tied him up, and did a Clockwork Orange deal on him, right? And made him watch South Park, right? And made him read the OT levels, right? And then he goes, I wasn't my fault, and I wasn't responsible, and they tied me up, and blah, blah, blah. I mean, that would itself be a whole thing. But let's just say, in this stupid example I'm giving here, that somebody had seen all of it and was somehow allowed on the OT levels, and they saw that it matched up, that it was the same stuff, right? They wouldn't really care. Like, they might go, oh, well, that's crazy. They're endangering people out there by showing them this stuff. But if they're allowed on there and they actually do it, and they're still in the mindset of being a Scientologist, then they're going to just, be able to put a curtain over that, and between them and that whole thing, and they're not going to, it wouldn't really throw them, in other words, right? Because that's not where their cult mindset came from. So that's not what's going to undo it. You see what I mean? So I think that's pretty much the best way I could answer that. But I really want to stress that the church is really, really adamant that, at least from my experience on this, that anybody who's been exposed to that information, and especially on purpose, isn't going to be allowed to go on the OT levels, or they're going to have to do such an amends project, as they call it. They're going to have to do so much work to show and prove that they are dedicated, loyal, secure Scientologists who can be trusted, that by the time they get done with all that work, they will be fully back in the Hubbard mindset, right? And any doubts, wanderings, whatever they might have had about the subject are going to be gone, and they'll be fully invested, and they'll be full, true believers again. So, I don't know. That's some of my thoughts on that.